The first note struck while my brother's untouched whiskey still trembled beside his photograph. Every year, on the night Luca died, I closed the Nocturne to strangers and filled it with men who had survived him. Capos in black suits crowded the velvet booths beneath amber chandeliers. Ice clicked against crystal. Cigar smoke clung to the red curtains, mixing with polished mahogany and expensive cologne. They toasted loyalty because grief was a word men like us refused to pronounce. Then a woman began singing behind the curtain. I had approved no singer. One moment, laughter rolled beneath the brass balconies. The next, her voice passed through the room like a hand lowering every weapon. A waiter stopped with champagne tilted above a glass. A capo froze midway through a joke. Even the piano seemed to soften beneath her. I could not see her face. Only a narrow silhouette showed through the crimson fabric. One hand resting on the microphone stand, a dark veil falling from her hair, her body held outside the white circle of the spotlight. Her voice was low and warm, but there was iron beneath it. She did not sing to flatter grieving men. She sang as though she knew what they had taken from the world. I should have ordered the curtain opened. The Nocturne belonged to me. Nothing inside it remained hidden without my permission. Instead, I removed the gold ring from my finger and set it beside Luca's glass. For 3 minutes, I was not Adrian Moretti, the man whose silence could empty a room. I was an older brother listening for footsteps that would never return. When the final note faded, no one applauded. The quiet felt colder than the marble under my shoes. Then the room erupted, but the curtain had already closed around her shadow. I beckoned to the stage manager. He hurried over, sweat shining along his temple despite the chilled air. "Bring her upstairs." His eyes dropped to the ring on the table. "She said she won't meet you, Mr. Moretti." Conversations died one by one. Men who had negotiated territory with guns under the table stared at him as if he had chosen his own funeral. Perhaps she misunderstood. She didn't. His throat moved. She said the song was for the dead, not for the man who owns the room. The insult should have cost him his job and her every stage in the city. My fingers closed around Luca's glass until the cut crystal pressed into my palm. Yet behind the curtain came the soft scrape of a microphone being returned to its stand. Unhurried, deliberate. She knew I could hear her refusing me. I crossed the floor myself. Leather soles tapped against black marble as the crowd separated. Backstage smelled of dust, hot cables, and fading perfume. A single blue work light burned above the curtains. Beyond them, the service door clicked shut. On the dressing room mirror, written in red lipstick, were 6 words: "You may listen. You may not summon." I stood before them while the bass from the empty stage vibrated faintly through the wall. No one had spoken to me that way in 20 years. I did not send men after her. I did not erase the message. I told the manager to preserve her place on the schedule, then returned to Luca's table with her voice still moving through the silence she had created. For the first time since my brother's death, I wanted something my name could not command, and I knew I would come back to hear her again. Rain polished the Nocturne's awning to a black mirror, and for the 4th night in a row, 2 armed guards remained beneath it while I entered alone. Inside, amber lamps warmed the brass rails, ice clicked against crystal, and cigar smoke hung above the tables like a low ceiling. My men knew better than to follow. The room they left around me felt larger than any throne. Behind the velvet curtain, Elena waited until the last chair stopped scraping. Then her voice rose through the blue darkness, low, unhurried, carrying no trace of obedience. I took the same rear table each night, leaving Luca's memorial booth untouched. Elena changed her set each time. Blues on Tuesday, a stripped-down hymn on Wednesday. On Thursday, she dismissed the pianist with a quiet word and sang to the soft percussion of rain against the high windows. She never stepped beyond the curtain. I never asked the stage manager to summon her again. That restraint cost me something no enemy had managed to take: certainty. Orders had always shortened the distance between desire and possession. With Elena, command would only close the door. On the 5th night, a waiter placed whiskey before me. I slid it away untouched. From behind the curtain came Elena's voice. "Your guards don't enter anymore. They make people nervous." "No," she said. "They make you feel less alone." A spoon struck a saucer across the room. The sound seemed indecently loud. I leaned back, feeling cold leather beneath my palms. "You think you know me? I know you sit where the light cannot reach your face." I know everyone watches your hands before they breathe. And I know you haven't touched a drink since you started coming alone. No one at the Nocturne would have dared inventory my habits aloud. Yet Elena spoke without mockery and without fear, as though my reputation were merely another coat I could remove at the door. I lifted the whiskey and carried it myself to the edge of the stage. The crowd stiffened. I poured it into an empty vase beside the curtain, then returned to my chair. A few men lowered their eyes. My authority had not vanished, but for one evening I had chosen not to hide inside it. Elena saw the choice. Her next song began without accompaniment, only breath moving across the microphone. 3 notes descended. 2 rose. Then came a melody so soft my mother used to hum it over Luca's bed during thunderstorms, when he was small enough to believe blankets could stop lightning. The Moretti lullaby had never been recorded. It had never been performed outside our home. My fingers closed around the table's edge until the linen wrinkled beneath them. Elena sang the forgotten second verse, the one Luca always begged to hear twice. When the final note faded, I crossed the empty space to the curtain, stopping inches from the velvet. Warm dust and her faint orange blossom perfume slipped through the seam. Where did you learn that song? Silence pressed against us from both sides. Then Elena reached forward and switched off the blue stage light, taking the room, and herself, into complete darkness. Come tomorrow after closing, she said. Alone. If you ask for my face, I leave. If you ask about the song, I decide whether you deserve the answer. For the first time in 20 years, the conditions belonged to someone else. Midnight, I said. Behind the curtain, her breathing steadied. Midnight. At midnight, the last ceiling light clicked off, leaving only a thin amber glow beneath the Nocturne service door. The air smelled of extinguished candles, old velvet, and lemon polish. Somewhere behind the walls, an ice machine groaned, then stopped. Adrian entered without a coat, without a gun, and without the men who usually moved like shadows around him. Elena had rearranged the room. The crimson curtain no longer separated the stage from the tables. Instead, darkness divided them. A single chair waited beneath the balcony, facing nothing. Sit, her voice said from an unseen corner. Adrian obeyed. Cold leather tightened beneath his hands. You came alone? You already know I did. A match scratched through the darkness. For 1 second, its sulphurous flare revealed Elena's black-gloved fingers and the edge of her veil. Then she touched the flame to a candle behind a frosted glass panel, leaving her body as a blurred silhouette. Tonight, you do not own this room, she said. You will not ask my name, follow me, photograph me, or have anyone search for me. Adrian's jaw shifted. Men had surrendered businesses and territories at the sound of his silence. Elena demanded something more difficult, restraint. And if I refuse, then you keep the song and lose the answer. The candle trembled between them. Adrian removed his signet ring, the Moretti crest gleaming briefly in the weak light, and placed it on the floor beside his chair. Metal struck wood with a small, final sound. For this hour, he said, I am only Luca's brother. The blurred figure behind the glass became still. Elena stepped closer, remaining beyond the light. Luca hated the first verse, she said. Your mother sang it whenever storms shook the windows. But he loved the second because it promised the lost child would be found. Adrian leaned forward. You knew him. That is not the question you were permitted to ask. Then change the rule. Her breath caught softly behind the partition. Adrian could have summoned men, locked every exit, and torn the truth from the building one door at a time. Instead, he remained seated, his empty hands visible. Please, he said. The words sounded foreign in his mouth. Elena opened the service door. Winter air swept across the room, carrying wet pavement and gasoline from the alley. Where did you learn the lullaby? Adrian asked. The boundary broke cleanly between them. Elena did not answer. Her silhouette slipped through the doorway, and the lock clicked before Adrian reached the corridor. No footsteps followed. No engine started. Only the draft moved through the dark club, lifting a paper napkin across the floor. Then something near the chair caught the candlelight. A silver lighter lay where Elena had stood, warm when Adrian closed his fingers around it. One side bore the worn Moretti crest. On the other, beneath a deep scratch, were 2 engraved initials. LM. Adrian pressed the wheel. A blue flame rose, illuminating a dent he remembered making when Luca was 17. This was not a copy. Adrian had placed it in his brother's hand the night before Luca died. Beyond the locked door, Elena was gone. In Adrian's palm, the dead had just returned with proof. Rain ticked against the black windows of the Moretti estate, each drop sharp in the silence of Luca's former study. The silver lighter moved beneath a magnifying lamp, its scratched crest throwing pale reflections across ledgers that smelled of dust and old tobacco. Adrian watched a discreet appraiser compare the engraving with Luca's archive possessions, then feed a cotton swab from the lighter's hinge into a sealed evidence tube. By dawn, the answer arrived. The soot embedded inside it came from the warehouse fire where Luca had died. No imitation could have carried that residue. Elena had possessed something recovered from the ashes. Adrian dismissed the appraiser, burned the written report, and kept the lighter. Then he made the mistake men in his position rarely survived. He investigated without telling his own counsel. Quiet orders moved through the city. Nocturne payroll records were pulled. Back entrances were checked. The stage manager was questioned only about scheduling, but even careful questions left fingerprints. Within 48 hours, the capos noticed canceled meetings, sealed files, and their boss studying a singer's empty time slot while the family shipments waited for approval. In the council chamber, amber light warmed the walnut table, but the air conditioning left the room cold enough to raise goose flesh. A woman refuses her name, one capo said, turning his heavy ring against the wood. And suddenly Luca's ghost is running our business. Adrian set both palms on the table. You were not asked for permission. That used to mean something, another replied. No one raised his voice. That made the challenge worse. Phones stopped vibrating. Chairs stopped creaking. Adrian could feel authority leaving him not in a mutiny, but in inches. Across town, Elena stepped through the rear corridor of a modest boarding house as steam hissed through old pipes and bleach stung the air. She carried one canvas bag, nothing else. A floorboard groaned behind her. In the warped glass of a framed fire escape map, she saw a man reflected beneath the buzzing fluorescent light, the same Moretti soldier who had watched the Nocturne service entrance the previous evening. He had not been sent by Adrian. Elena did not run toward the stairs. She pulled the fire alarm. Bells erupted through the building, doors flew open, and residents flooded the corridor in coats and slippers. Hidden among them, Elena passed the soldier at arm's length, crossed the wet alley, and disappeared into a city bus as its doors folded shut. By the time the man forced his way outside, only red taillights trembled across the rain. Her room held no photographs, no documents, no trace of the veil. Just one scorched ribbon in the sink, still curling at the edges. That evening, Adrian entered the Nocturne and found her performance slot struck from the schedule. The stage manager silently placed an unopened envelope on the bar. Inside was Adrian's private search order, the one only 3 trusted men had seen, marked with the boarding house address in unfamiliar handwriting. Elena had vanished because someone inside his organization had hunted her first. At the emergency council meeting, Adrian laid the compromised order on the walnut table. The capos did not look at the paper. They looked at him. Until this woman is found and this breach is explained, the eldest said, sliding the shipment ledgers beyond Adrian's reach. The council will no longer act on your word alone. The lighter felt cold in Adrian's pocket. Elena was gone. A traitor knew she mattered, and for the first time since inheriting the Moretti Empire, Adrian gave an order that no one obeyed. Energy-efficient home upgrades make your home comfortable while helping you save energy. Adrian had lost more than her trail. He had lost the room. At 2:13 a.m., the iron gate of the Moretti estate groaned open beneath white security lamps, and cold wind carried the scent of wet cedar across the gravel drive. A woman in a charcoal coat walked toward the mansion with both hands visible, her face hidden behind a dark veil. Elena had returned without an escort, without permission, and without waiting for Adrian to find her. The guards raised their weapons. She stopped 10 feet from the front steps and placed a small metal reel case on the rain-darkened stone. Tell Adrian Moretti I brought back his brother's voice. Minutes later, amber light spilled across the entrance hall's black marble. Adrian appeared at the balcony rail, his jacket open, the council's authority no longer resting comfortably on his shoulders. His gaze moved from Elena to the case. Search her, a guard said. No, Elena's voice cut through the vaulted room. If anyone touches me, I leave with the tape. Adrian descended slowly, the silver lighter pressed against his pocket with every step. You came here knowing someone in my organization wants you silenced. I came because running lets him decide what Luca died for. She lifted the real case and walked past the armed men before Adrian could invite her inside. For once, everyone in the Moretti house adjusted to her movement. Elena chose Luca's old study. The room still held the dry smell of tobacco and leather, but the shipment ledgers were gone, leaving clean rectangles in the dust. She set the case beside an aging reel-to-reel recorder and tested the machine with practiced fingers. A motor clicked beneath its steel housing. Adrian closed the door. Elena did not open the case. Your gun. His jaw tightened. Then he drew the pistol from beneath his jacket, removed the magazine, and placed both on a table across the room. The knife at your ankle. A blade followed, touching the wood with a thin metallic note. Your phone. Your signet ring. Anything that tells you men must obey before you speak. Outside, shoes shifted in the corridor. Adrian removed the Moretti ring and laid it beside the weapons. The pale band around his finger looked almost indecent under the desk lamp. Leave us, he ordered. Elena held still. That is still power entering the room. Adrian opened the door himself. No one comes in. No one listens. And no one follows her when she leaves. The guards hesitated, then withdrew. Their footsteps faded over stone until only the recorder's low electrical hum remained. Elena slid the bolt into place from her side. The balance of the room changed with that small brass click. She opened the case. Inside lay a single reel of brown magnetic tape, its edges curled with age. Luca's handwriting crossed the label. For Adrian, if I don't come back. Adrian reached toward it, but Elena covered the reel with her gloved palm. Your brother gave me this on the last night I saw him. The confession emptied the air from Adrian's lungs. His hand stopped inches from hers. You knew he was going to die? I knew he was going to do something your family would never forgive. She threaded the tape through the recorder, each turn precise, then pressed neither play nor rewind. Once you hear him, you cannot threaten the truth back into silence. You cannot buy it, bury it, or punish me for carrying it. Adrian looked at the gun, the ring, and the locked door. Then he pulled Luca's chair from the desk and sat down empty-handed. Play it. Elena's fingers settled over the switch. The reels began to turn, whispering like breath in a sealed room. Static cracked through the speaker. Then Luca Moretti spoke. Adrian, if you're hearing this, our family lied to you about the fire. The tape hissed beneath Luca's voice, soft as rain dragged across stone. A brass lamp cast a narrow pool of amber over the recorder, while the rest of the study remained cold enough for Adrian's breath to cloud the window. Elena stood beside the locked door, her gloved hand resting near the veil that still concealed her face. The fire wasn't an accident, Luca said through the speaker. I was collecting names, shipping dates, payments. Our family has been protecting a trafficking route through the eastern docks. Adrian's fingers closed around the arms of Luca's chair. The old leather creaked. I tried to bring the evidence to you. The recording continued. They told me you approved the route. I didn't believe them. But if you protected after hearing this, then I was wrong about you. The reel turned. Luca named warehouses, shell companies, and men Adrian had trusted since childhood. No new mystery formed in the room. An old lie simply lost every wall that had held it upright. Then came Luca's final warning. They know Elena survived. If anything happens to us, look at the eastern route. That is where the order came from. The tape clicked to silence. Adrian remained seated until the empty reel spun 3 full circles. Then he rose. Elena shifted in front of the recorder. You promised no threats. Adrian crossed to the desk, but he did not reach for his gun or phone. He pressed the intercom instead. Bring the council to the east dining room. Now. They will demand the ring, Elena said. Let them. 20 minutes later, the long walnut table gleamed beneath white chandeliers. Cigar smoke hung beneath the ceiling, bitter against the smell of rain-soaked wool. Adrian entered without his weapons, without his signet ring, and without Elena. She remained behind Luca's locked study door with the tape, her terms still intact. Ledgers were already opened before the capos. The Eastern route had financed their judges, crews, and political protection for 12 years. Adrian placed both palms on the table. Close every warehouse. Release every driver and dock worker who cooperates. Send the manifests to federal prosecutors. Chairs scraped back. One capo demanded a vote. Another threatened to withdraw his cruise. A third reminded Adrian that half the Moretti cash flow would disappear before sunrise. Then let it disappear, Adrian said. Phones began ringing across the table. Accounts were frozen. Trucks were recalled. Two allied families severed contact before the first warehouse keys reached the authorities. By dawn, millions were beyond recovery, and the council had stripped Adrian of authority over the remaining routes. The empire he had commanded now moved without asking him. When Adrian returned to the study, his shirt smelled of smoke and wet pavement. Elena opened the door, but kept to the darkest edge of the room. "It is closed," he said. "Not hidden. Closed." She studied his empty hands. "And what did it cost?" "Everything they once obeyed me for." Adrian looked toward her veil, then lowered his eyes before curiosity could become another demand. Outside, engines roared as Moretti guards abandoned the estate under new orders. Elena lifted Luca's reel from the machine. "Your brother believed you could choose the truth," she said. "He never knew whether you would survive choosing it." A sharp burst of static sounded from the stage manager's number on the study telephone, followed by 3 words before the connection died. "Nocturne is burning." Orange fire rolled behind the Nocturne's stained glass windows, turning the midnight rain the color of rust. Glass cracked above the entrance, and smoke pressed into the street with the bitter smell of scorched velvet and spilled bourbon. Adrian reached the curb without guards, stripped of the army that once arrived before him. Elena stepped from the car beside him, Luca's reel locked inside a metal case against her ribs. "Stay here," Adrian said. Elena caught his sleeve. "They are not burning the club. They are hunting this." A shot punched through the brass doorframe. Adrian pulled her behind a parked sedan as another round shattered its rear window, showering them with cold glass. Through the smoke, a figure moved across the balcony. One of the men who had followed Elena after Adrian began investigating Luca's lighter. The traitor shouted down that the reel could disappear with the building, and the Moretti families would call the fire an accident. Adrian reached beneath his coat, then remembered the gun lying in Luca's study. For the first time, his empty hands were not a gesture of trust. They were a liability. Elena placed the case in them. "Service corridor. Keep low." Before he could stop her, she ran toward the entrance. Heat rippled across the wet sidewalk. She seized a fallen fire extinguisher, smashed the side door's weakened latch, and vanished into smoke thick enough to erase the chandeliers. Adrian followed, coughing as burning curtains dropped behind them. On stage, the traitor descended the balcony stairs with his weapon trained on the metal case. "Give me the tape." Adrian stepped into the red emergency light, holding the case away from Elena. Luca already spoke. The traitor fired at the ceiling. Plaster burst downward, and a lighting bar tore loose above Adrian with a shriek of twisting steel. Elena moved first. She drove her shoulder into Adrian and sent him sliding across the sticky floor as the bar crashed where he had stood. The impact knocked her against the stage. Her veil snagged on a jagged microphone stand. Black fabric stretched, tore, and fell into the sparks. The traitor froze. So did Adrian. Firelight crossed Elena's uncovered face, revealing a pale burn scar that ran from her temple along her cheek and disappeared beneath her collar. Not a mark Adrian had merely heard described. A mark preserved in the only photograph recovered from the warehouse fire he had ordered years ago. A nameless witness his men had assured him was dead. Memory struck in fragments. His own command to erase the site. Luca discovering what had been done. Luca turning his car back toward the flames while Adrian's men blocked the road. "You," Adrian breathed. Elena's eyes did not leave his. "Luca came back for me." Rain hissed through the broken roof. The metal case slipped from Adrian's fingers and struck the floor with a hollow clang. Luca had not died because the fire trapped him. He had died entering the fire Adrian created, saving the woman Adrian had condemned without ever seeing her face. Behind them, the traitor raised his weapon again. Elena kicked the extinguisher across the floor, knocking his aim aside, then pulled the fire alarm lever. Steel shutters slammed between the stage and exits, trapping the armed man as sirens rose outside. Adrian did not look back. He stood before Elena with smoke staining his shirt and Luca's guilt burning through his name. "Tell me what happens now," he said. Elena lifted the torn veil, but did not replace it. "Now you decide whether Luca's truth ends with your empire or with you." Sirens cut through the rain while red light swept across the Nocturne's wet brick walls. Smoke carried the bitter smell of burned velvet into the alley, and water streamed from Adrian's cuffs as firefighters led the trapped traitor away. Adrian crossed to an unmarked police sedan before anyone could stop him. Elena followed, barefaced, Luca's metal case held against her ribs. "Where are you going?" she asked. Adrian opened the rear door, but did not enter. "To remove the last shield between my orders and their consequences." By dawn, the federal building's fluorescent lights had turned his smoke-stained shirt the color of ash. No capo stood behind him. No attorney waited beside him. Adrian placed his phone, signet ring, and the Nocturne's master keys in a gray plastic tray, then slid a signed confession across the interview table. The paper named the warehouse, the date, and the command he had given to destroy the evidence inside. It also identified the officials who had concealed the trafficking route and the Moretti accounts that had paid them. Elena remained beyond the glass, her scarf fully visible beneath the hard white light. She had demanded truth, not theater. Adrian gave her evidence that could imprison him. An investigator entered and set a recorder between them. Its red light blinked on. "For the record," the man said, "were you aware anyone remained inside that warehouse?" Adrian looked through the glass at Elena. Years earlier, he had reduced unseen lives to a report on his desk. Now one of those lives stood 10 feet away, refusing to lower her eyes. "I knew the building had not been cleared," he said. "I ordered the fire anyway." The words landed without thunder. Air hummed through the ceiling vents. Somewhere down the corridor, a steel door closed. Elena's fingers tightened around Luca's case, but she did not turn away. Adrian continued. He surrendered the names of the surviving trafficking partners, waived immunity, and transferred control of the Nocturne to an independent trust for the workers harmed by Moretti operations. Then he signed away the estate, directing its sale toward restitution. Closing the eastern route had cost him an empire. This cost him the freedom to rebuild one. When the investigator reached for the metal case, Elena stepped into the room. "The recording stays with me until every name he gave you is protected," she said. Her voice carried no tremor. The investigator paused, then nodded. Adrian did not intervene. For the first time, power moved around him without asking permission. An officer entered with handcuffs. Their cold steel clicked shut around Adrian's wrists. He rose and faced Elena across the table. "Luca came back for you," he said. "I can't make that sacrifice clean." "No," Elena answered. Rain traced silver lines down the window behind her. "But you can stop using his death to hide from what you did." Adrian lowered his head once, accepting the sentence before any judge pronounced it. As the officer led him toward the secure elevator, Elena called his name. He turned. Her scar caught the pale morning light. There was no veil in her hands now. "The Nocturne belongs to its workers," she said. "They want to reopen." The elevator doors waited behind him, black and narrow. Adrian studied the woman whose voice had first reached him from darkness, then glanced at the keys resting in the evidence tray. "Only if you choose the first song," he said. The doors closed between them, leaving Elena with Luca's recording, a silent stage, and a choice no one could make for her. 3 months later, warm amber light spilled across the restored brass doors of the Nocturne, and a trumpet's low murmur drifted through air scented with fresh paint, coffee, and rain-damp wool. The velvet curtains had been cleaned but not replaced. Faint smoke stains remained along their hems because the workers had voted to remember what the building had survived. Elena stood behind them without a veil. Beyond the fabric, federal witnesses sat beside bartenders, stagehands, and families once trapped inside the Moretti trafficking route. No private balcony had been reserved. No armed guards watched the exits. Above the bar, a simple plaque named Luca Moretti and those he had died trying to save. The stage manager approached with a microphone, then stopped an arm's length away, allowing Elena to take it herself. Its metal felt cool against her scarred palm. "They're ready," he said. Elena listened to the restless chairs, the clink of ice in glasses, the nervous coughs from a room that had once paid to hear her voice while agreeing not to see her face. On a small monitor near the lighting board, a secure prison feed flickered to life. Adrian sat alone beneath hard fluorescent light, wearing a plain gray uniform. The glass wall behind him reflected a man without a signet ring, an empire, or anyone required to obey him. He did not reach toward the screen. He waited. Elena could have sung from behind the curtain again. The workers would have understood. The witnesses would have forgiven it. Instead, she wrapped both hands around the velvet and pulled. Brass rings scraped across the rod with a sound like a lock being opened. White stage light struck the scar along her face, exposing every uneven ridge the fire had left behind. A few people drew breath. No one looked away. Elena walked to the center mark and placed Luca's recording on a stool beside her, not as evidence to hide, but as a voice that had finally reached the world. Then she looked directly into the camera. Adrian's fingers tightened once against his knees. "You asked me to choose the first song," she said. "I chose the one your brother used to sing when he believed this family could still become something better." The first notes came without accompaniment. Her voice trembled on Luca's lullaby, then steadied, filling the repaired room and passing through the prison speaker with every breath left uncovered. Adrian lowered his head. Tears struck his clasped hands, but he made no attempt to wipe them away. This time her voice did not comfort his loneliness or excuse his ruin. It carried the names of the living, the cost of Luca's return, and the face Adrian's order had tried to erase. When the final note faded, silence held the room for one long heartbeat. Then the stage manager began to clap. The bartenders joined him. Survivors rose first, followed by the workers, until the applause rolled through the Nocturne like clean thunder. Elena remained beneath the light, scar visible, eyes steady. On the monitor, Adrian stood as an officer arrived to end the call. He placed one hand against the glass, not asking for forgiveness, only acknowledging the woman he had finally learned to see. Elena answered with a small nod, then turned from him toward the people who had chosen to rebuild. The prison screen went dark. The stage did not. And that night, the voice Adrian had fallen for no longer belonged to his darkness. It belonged to the woman who had survived it.